850 species of birds have been recorded in South Africa. Out of that, 350 are seabirds. Out of that, only one is flightless.
We actually saw penguin numbers recover through the 1990s. They went down through the 70s and the 80s, but we had some very good years of fish recruitment in the 1990s, and penguin numbers actually increased towards the end of the 1990s. But unfortunately, since then, things have gone very badly wrong. So the fish have largely stopped moving to the west coast, and that's where most of the historical penguin colonies have been.
Every year, 60,000 people flock to Simonstown, near Cape Town, to visit Boulders Beach, to view the African penguin. Beach access allows visitors to have close encounters or swim with these beautiful creatures. The African penguin is one of 4 species of the genus Phoniscus. All 4 species are known for their donkey-like call, thus commonly known as the jackass penguin. Boulders Beach is one of the very few places that an endangered species comes into conflict with humans, where humans were there first. The first penguins came ashore in 1983. In 1985, they bred for the first time.
Just grew rapidly from there, from a small little nucleus. More and more penguins heard the word that this was a nice place to hang out, and by the late 1990s there were over 1,000 pairs of penguins breeding at Boulders, and most of that growth was through immigration. So the colony grew much faster than it could have grown just through chicks from those first few adults recruiting to the colony. We'll never know quite how many. Or what we do know now is that there's very few left, unfortunately.
It is common for the African penguin to lay 2 eggs, and if conditions are favorable, it is quite capable of raising both chicks. After 40 days, the eggs hatch. The chicks stay in their nest for about 75 days. A parent remains in attendance to protect the chick and keep it warm. But some penguins aren't as lucky.
Ideally, the penguins would breed in burrows. Historically, they would have burrowed into the guano cap that had formed on the breeding islands, and guano is a really nice substrate for burrowing into because it's reasonably firm, but it drains nicely. And the burrows have lots of advantages because they're a nice cool microclimate, and they protect the eggs and chicks from predators like kelp gulls. And unfortunately, with the removal of guano from the islands for fertilizer, most penguins now are forced to breed on the surface, or if they breed in holes, they're often breeding in rocky holes, and then if it rains heavily, the eggs get flooded and the chicks get cold and wet in winter. So that's one of the problems that they face.
Man-made burrows have been created to ensure the penguins a safe nesting space. They are also used to monitor nesting pairs for conservation. Occasionally you will find both mates at the nest, ready to take turns to incubate the egg. Penguins nesting on the beach often fail. With climate change, the frequency of days with extremely high temperatures has increased. This results in more storms. These storms bring high tides and nests are often washed away. While they are breeding, particularly while they are incubating, guarding their chicks, the penguins are susceptible to high temperatures. They will orientate themselves away from the sun to minimize their exposure. Penguins try to dissipate the heat through their feathers by raising their flippers. The main mechanism of removing heat is to pant or gula flutter. This means they open their mouths and flutter their throat in and out. The different parts of the mouth are coated with a layer of water. This creates evaporative cooling, but comes at a cost of water loss, so the bird starts to dehydrate. If the bird loses too much water, it eventually has to abandon its eggs or chicks to go down to the water to drink. This is when the culp gulls will attack the nest. Adult penguins have this nice bold streak of black and white plumage, which is very visible out at sea. It is specifically designed to scare fish into tight groups to facilitate foraging on pelagic schooling fish. The juveniles have a uniform grey-blue shading into a white counter-shaded camouflage. This is because they swim much slower and not as easily as the adults. They feed on slow-moving fish and need to be better camouflaged to avoid sharks and seals. Penguins must look after their feathers in order to keep them waterproof. This is why you often find them preening. Preening is when they spread preen oil over their feathers. Preen oil is excreted from a gland at the base of the tail. The penguin will reach back and rub the gland with its bill and head and then transfer that oil all over their plumage. Often couples will preen each other. This is known as allopreening. The African penguin's main diet is pelagic fish, such as sardines and anchovies.
Unfortunately, they're quite particular in that diet, so they're not prepared to go and scavenge other things typically, so they won't go and swim behind a fishing boat and feed on scraps, unlike, say, Cape gannets.
Typically, they would like their food to be around 20 kilometers from their colony. However, this is no longer the case. Nowadays, they have to travel further and further away to find food. In the past 10 to 12 years, the African penguin population in South Africa has decreased by 80%.
As we fish the oceans more and more intensively, so there's less food for seabirds, so that leads to conflict in terms of direct competition. And also seabirds often interact with fishing vessels and get killed accidentally by fishing gear, so those are the major problems.
The increase of shipping to the west coast has had an impact on the population decrease. This is because major fisheries have set up along the west coast, which supports a small biomass of fish. So penguins are competing directly with people for food. But there are solutions. There is a movement placing pressure on the fishing industry to go fish further up the east coast, where there is a bigger biomass of fish. They are also encouraged to employ a regionally based quota system for better spatial management. A complementary way of tackling this problem is to try and promote the formation of new penguin colonies on the south coast, closer to where the fish are. Hopefully these solutions will become a reality one day, so that no penguin will be seen alone again.